All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. We want to make sure that we take advantage of time. So welcome, everyone. We are thrilled to have you with us today. Excelsior University's leadership, the Center for Social Justice, and the Women's Rope Team welcome you to today's Women's History Month keynote entitled Leading Beyond Limits, Overcoming Barriers, and Owning Your Power and Resilience. For those of you who are not acquainted with Excelsior's rope teams, we have developed a collection of communities we call rope teams, which we describe as representation and support villages around our students based on what matters to them. If you want to learn more about our rope teams or how to engage with them, you can visit them at communities.excelsior.edu, or you can contact the Center for Social Justice for more information. We have a very special guest with us today, Dr. Robin Holmes-Sullivan, president of Lewis and Clark College in Portland, Oregon. I had the privilege of working for and with Robin for 7 years at the University of Oregon, and I cannot tell you how thrilled I am to be introducing her to the Excelsior community. So thank you for visiting us this morning, President Holmes-Sullivan, and we're honored to have you. But before we introduce you formally, I have the pleasure of introducing Dr. David Scable, president of Excelsior University, who has kindly offered to say a few words about Women's History Month. David.
Thank you, Daniel, and thank you, Robin, for being with us. We really appreciate it. Welcome. So Women's History Month is a celebration of the countless contributions that women have made to society. This year's theme, Moving Forward Together, Women Educating and Inspiring Generations, highlights the powerful influence of women who've dedicated their lives to education. They've dedicated their lives to mentorship, and they've also dedicated their lives to leadership. So as we honor the achievements of women throughout history, we also acknowledge the challenges that they continue to face. For instance, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, in the United States, women make up nearly half of the workforce, but they earn just 82 cents for every dollar earned by men. And women of color face even greater disparities, with Black women earning 61 cents and Hispanic women earning 53 cents for every dollar earned by white men. However, based on data from the National Center for Education Statistics, despite these challenges, women are making really important strides in education, with more women than men earning bachelor's and master's degrees today. So today's keynote speaker, Robin Holmes-Sullivan, is herself a testament to the determination and perseverance of women who have shattered glass ceilings and paved the way for future generations. As we move forward together, we must continue to amplify the voices of women, particularly those who have been historically marginalized. Throughout Women's History Month, let's highlight the stories of women who've made a lasting impact on our world, from suffragettes to scientists, artists to activists. Let's celebrate the diverse contributions of women and explore the ways in which they continue to shape our society. We honor the achievements of women. We should also acknowledge the work that remains to be done. We must continue to push for policies and practices that promote equality and inclusion, and we have to support the women who are leading those charges. So join us as we celebrate Women's History Month and move forward together, inspired by the power and resilience of women. Welcome, President Holmes-Sullivan. Thank you for being with us. Daniel, back to you.
Thank you, David. Before I pass the microphone to Pam to introduce our guest speaker, I want to thank a number of people and units that made today's event possible, starting with Maria and Nyla from marketing, Erin, Jason, Stacy, and Connor from communications, our President David, Jill, and Lori from the President's Office, and of course, Pam from the Center for Social Justice. Thank you so much for your amazing partnership and support. Also, we will have time after President Holmes-Sullivan's keynote for comments and questions from the audience. Please use the Q&A space to share your comments or questions throughout or after the presentation. Know that you'll have the choice of having us, Pam and me, read your questions for Robin to address, or you may also ask to be elevated as a panelist so that you may ask your question verbally and visibly. We are looking forward to your insight and to our dialogue. So thank you. Pam?
Thank you, Daniel. So I have the humble, the honor, and I'm humbled to introduce Dr. Robin Holmes-Sullivan. Dr. Robin Holmes-Sullivan is a 26th president of the Lewis and Clark College, the first woman and person of color to serve in that role in the institution's 156-year history. She began her tenure as president in July 2022 after serving as the college's vice president of student life and dean of students for 3 years. Dr. Holmes-Sullivan came to Lewis and Clark from the University of California, where she served as vice president for student affairs, providing strategic leadership in support of the 10-campus, 295,000 student system in the development and implementation of policy and practice. Prior to the University of California, Dr. Holmes-Sullivan spent 25 years at the University of Oregon, serving 9 years as Vice President of Student Life. At the University of Oregon, she led efforts in support of students' academic success, including the construction of new resident halls, a new student union, recreation center, and health counseling center additions. She also provided leadership and policy development in areas of sexual assault, sexual violence prevention, campus climate, co-curricular learning opportunities, suicide prevention, wellness initiatives, and cultural competency. Dr. Holmes-Sullivan has also maintained a private clinical psychology and consulting practice for more than 3 decades. While she sees clients in therapy, she also consults on issues of diversity, multicultural organizational development for higher education institutions and private corporations, as well as leadership development and mental health and wellness issues. Dr. Holmes-Sullivan holds a PhD and master's degree from California School of Professional Psychology and received a master's and bachelor's degree from California State Fullerton. Welcome, President Holmes-Sullivan. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Pamela, for that generous introduction. Hopefully you're able to see my screen. It is just such a pleasure and an honor to be with all of you today. I'm super excited about spending a bit of time with you talking about something that I love talking about, and that's leadership. My talk is entitled Leading Beyond Limits, Overcoming Barriers and Owning Your Power and Resilience. And what an apropos topic to be discussing with you, Excelsior University students. I'm so glad that you're here, that you're pursuing higher education and really improving yourselves and your social mobility for your future, because college really matters. And you're making a commitment now that will really make a difference. So good for you. And Excelsior University, what a great model. It's an institution that's known for its commitment to accessible and flexible education, particularly for adult learners and military personnel and working professionals, with an emphasis on diversity and inclusion and empowering students from all backgrounds to achieve their academic goals. And I can't think of a more worthy mission to have. So that's just fantastic. And it's an honor to be able to speak with you. So just a little bit about what we're going to be doing today, the goals for this session, hopefully. It's going to be a big appreciation about women in leadership. I'm going to talk a lot about that, and I appreciate your president's introduction in regards to that. We're going to talk about how we turn barriers and into power and resilience, and how important that is for leadership. And I'm going to have you do a little bit of kind of testing or reflecting about your own leadership skills and traits. And so if you could have something to write on or to write with, or if you want to use your phone just to be able to jot down some notes, that would be fantastic. And I want to start by also saying, happy International Women's Month and happy Women's History Month. And that is not in any way to exclude anyone or exclude men. It's important that all of us celebrate each other, but this is really a time to center our thoughts and our understanding and the opportunities for women. And so that's what we're going to be doing today. So let's start. I want to start with a little bit about me, your presenter. And I see myself, I'm a wife, I'm a mother, now I'm a grandmother, which I can't believe, but I'm blessed to be so. And this is actually a picture of me and my wife, Kathy. We're out on some adventure. I can't even tell you what it is because we traveled quite a bit. I feel very lucky and blessed to have a very fantastic and supportive family. But my story, it almost always is about being the first. You heard about that a little bit in my biography, but let me say a little bit more about that because it's something that's been a recurrent theme for me. I was the first in my family to obtain any graduate degrees out of the 5 kids, the first and only in my family to earn a doctorate. I was the first freshman captain on my basketball team in college, the first woman and person of color, and to this day, I'm pretty sure the only one to lead the counseling center at the University of Oregon. I was the first person of color to be named the vice president of student life at University of Oregon, the first African-American person to be vice president at Lewis and Clark College, and as you heard, first woman and person of color and openly gay person to be named president of Lewis and Clark College in our 156-year history. 156 years is a long, long time to be without those first. So first. It's an honor, but it's also a burden of being the only one, without role models at times or any instruction kit about how to do it. That's obviously been a really big part of my story. Another big part of my story, a big part of my identity was as a Division I college athlete. So here I am on my basketball team way back in the day. I think it was 1986. This was my senior year. So by then I had been captain for 4 years, leading the team, handling the pressure and producing when needed. It had become second nature. And for me, luckily, leadership came pretty naturally. But everything that I learned about being a leader, pushing myself, being part of a team, believing in myself, believing in others. I learned that on the basketball court. And those lessons truly are with me every day. Another huge part of my identity is that of a healer and a therapist, a clinical psychologist, someone who's practiced therapy for over 34 years. And for as long as I can remember, really, I wanted to help people. I remember my friends were always coming to me to talk and to talk about things that they were struggling with, or they just wanted me to listen. And I must have been pretty good at it because a lot of them came to me all the time. And I really did want to help. And this is a picture from the 1976 movie Sybil, one of my favorite movies, starring Sally Field as the very troubled young person who had experienced just horrific child abuse, horrific abuse as a child. And she developed what we called back then multiple personality disorder. And that's her psychiatrist, Dr. Wilbur, who was portrayed by Joanne Woodward. She was fantastic in this role. I wanted to be Dr. Wilbur, right? But Dr. Wilbur was a psychiatrist, which meant she had to go to medical school. I doubted that I would test well enough to get into medical school. I doubted that I had the math skills, that they would be strong enough for me to succeed in medical school. So, being the resilient, practical person that I was then and I am still now, I pivoted to something that felt more in my reach and became a clinical psychologist. Not exactly the same as Dr. Wilbur, but definitely allowing me to harness my passion for helping others in the ways that I had dreamed of. And it was the right decision for me, even if it was born out of my insecurity and doubt, because my desire was to be well trained in order to help people. And I definitely received that. Making the decision not to try to become a medical doctor was definitely made out of fear, but in the long run, it was okay. It's those messages that we get and seeds of doubt that can sometimes really cause barriers that we have to work to overcome. And there's just no way for me to tell my leadership journey story without telling you about the strong feelings that I've had at times about being an imposter. Even in graduate school, I questioned, was I smart enough to be there? Had there been some mistake in the enrollment process? Someone was going to come up one day and tap me on the shoulder and say, "Hey, I don't know how you got in here, but you're not supposed to be here," and then kick me out. And these seeds of doubt are sown because of the world that we live in which there are few role models that are available, telling those of us that are in the minority that we do actually belong and that we will actually succeed. I mean, how can I be Dr. Wilbur when I'm just a little Black girl, right? I didn't see anyone who looked like that, who were in that role. But lucky for me that, with every seed of doubt, I always, every step of the way, had a very loving, supportive family, especially my mom and my dad. But my siblings, too, played a huge role very early on because they would tell me that I could do whatever I wanted to do if I worked hard at it. And my job, and it was a hard job. My job was believing that. And that's hard to do in the realities of oppression and microaggressions, discrimination and bias. That's why it's important. It's really important to have people who look like me, right? Who've journeyed the journey that may resemble the path that you are on or you're going to be on, to talk to you about getting on that other side. Because if I can do it, so can you. So even though at times I didn't think that I belonged in graduate school or in a certain space or at a job, I remembered those who believed in me and saw something in me, and I worked hard to believe it too. And my reward is I get to be in front of people like you, telling you my story and letting you know that my story is your story too. So let's talk about leadership, because this country, this world, it really needs your leadership, right? Your success, your engagement, because the truth is your success is really all of our success as well. Leaders, they're individuals who guide and inspire, and they influence others toward a shared vision. And that shared vision is really, really an important component of leadership. They embody traits like integrity, empathy, resilience, and decisiveness. Leaders not only set the direction, but they foster collaboration and empower their team members. A leader is someone who inspires passion and motivation in its followers. Leaders have a vision and the path to realize that vision. That's why people want to follow them, right? I personally believe in being what we call a servant leader, someone who is in service to helping others to be their best, to achieve and to have a sense of purpose and satisfaction. Because to me, that is the best part of being in a leadership role. What isn't leadership? Well, I'll tell you, a bad leader is often characterized as someone who fails to inspire, fails to motivate and guide their team effectively. A bad leader often creates a toxic or demotivating work environment, which leads to poor performance and employee dissatisfaction. Bad leaders, they micromanage. They're poor communicators, and they lack accountability. They're often very resistant to change, can be authoritarian, and they don't set clear expectations. And they rarely lead by example, which leads to a lack of trust and respect on the part of employees or those who think that they should be following them. You have to want to follow a leader. And people, maybe not right away, but eventually, people will not follow a bad leader. So let's talk about women and women leaders. Women are meant to be leaders, especially now. And we definitely should be lifting up women of color in particular to be leaders, because our country needs women to be leaders in order for our country to truly thrive. According to Harvard Business Review, by 2060, the majority of American women will be women of color. And in turn, women of color will most likely comprise most of the workforce. We got to make sure folks are ready. Already, we women of color generate 1 trillion as consumers and 361 billion in revenue as entrepreneurs, launching companies at 4 times the rate of all women-owned businesses. We're growing in size and power, and in many ways, it feels like our moment. Women they're really flexing their muscles in the public eyes right now, capturing attention, making huge economic impacts, and dominating the airwaves like never before, especially in 2023. A woman running for president, Kamala Harris, and a Black and Asian woman at that, seem to be the exclamation point on an extraordinary year for women in 2023 and 24. It might stand out as the year when girls really unleashed their economic power. Female spending became a powerful force during this time, impacting the economies of cities and even impacting countries. In May, Beyonce single-handedly raised inflation in Sweden when adoring fans from all over showed up for the kickoff of her Renaissance World Tour. Beyonce's tour has been devoted to honoring Black and LGBTQ plus communities. It put it all in that spotlight, and it's inspired attendees to shop at Black-owned businesses, being conscious of that and giving those businesses what has affectionately been called the Beyonce bump. And her Renaissance World Tour has led some to really reassess the economic power of her large Black female fan base. Not only did they and other fans spend vast amounts of money on tickets, but they also spent money on flights and hotels and everything, all to see the Queen Bee perform. According to the New York Times, Beyonce's tour generated an estimated $4.5 billion, that's billion with a B, for the American economy. So, and in a year when the female spending was already leading the way, we also had the Taylor Swift phenomenon. Her Eras tour became the first in history to surpass 1 billion in revenue before she'd even reached the halfway mark of her 151 shows globally. And the WNBA, it has significantly impacted both the sports landscape and the economy, driving increased viewership and attendance and revenue, solidifying women's basketball as a valuable entertainment option and industry mainstay. I'll tell you, I would have not given anything to have that kind of fan base when I was playing back in the day. And this is just a quick graphic that shows just a dramatic increase in viewership of women's basketball. And this example is actually pertaining to the viewership of the NCAA college basketball playoffs last year, where more people watched the women's 2024 basketball finals than the men's final by millions, right? It's a time. So let me continue to make the case why we need more women leaders. I think that's the case because diverse perspectives really drive innovation. Research shows that diverse leadership teams lead to better decision-making and overall success. Women, they bring unique perspectives and experiences to the table, pushing boundaries and really driving innovation. Women are often praised for their empathy and their emotional intelligence, which are very, very important leadership traits. Being in touch with your feelings. Sometimes it's a kind of a stereotype that's applied to women, and it can be somewhat harmful or seen as a weakness, but it's actually a superpower, right? And it doesn't in any way diminish the fact that women also, it doesn't apply to all women that way, and it shouldn't minimize and portray in any way that women don't have the ability to think rationally and logically. Of course we do. But nevertheless, high emotional intelligence, it's an essential quality for good leadership. The ability to connect with others on a deeper level, it really encourages trust and openness, all contributing to employee satisfaction. Women pursuing career advancement such as leadership we haven't enjoyed the same advantages that men do. And this is multiplied exponentially for women who are marginalized in other ways too. So therefore, when they get into these leadership roles, women have already faced obstacles and have had to persevere through them to pursue the goals that they want. So this resilience, it often translates into greater determination, inner strength, and clarity that can bolster their role as a leader. Women tend to adopt a much more inclusive leadership style, valuing input from all team members and creating a supportive work environment. And this collaborative approach promotes diversity and inclusion, and leads to higher employee satisfaction and retention. It just makes for a better work environment. And by breaking barriers and shattering glass ceilings, female leaders really, they inspire future generations of women to pursue their dreams too and strive for leadership roles. So their success in turn paves the way for greater equity and empowerment overall in the workplace and in our country. But how do we know that women make great leaders? Well, here's some of the science. Men and women actually handle stress differently when they're in difficult situations. That's because women's brains can actually manage higher levels of cortisol, a particular hormone that gets released during stress, to positively impact the decision-making process. Women just make better decisions under stress. And research shows that when men are under stress, that they tend to behave more riskier, often causing some negative impacts or some costly outcomes. Also, women tend to be more what we call transformational leaders, meaning that they seek to develop others and listen more effectively, in addition to generally thinking much more outside of the box than their male counterparts. Female leaders understand the importance of investing their time in development and others, so they tend to be much more relational. And a national survey by the Pew Research Center for Social and Demographic Trends concluded that adult women are better than or equal to men in 7 of the 8 primary leadership traits assessed throughout the survey. So, for example, in looking at a report of what makes a good leader, there are characteristics such as honesty, intelligence, compassion, and innovation rank quite high. Women rate quite high on that rating scale when compared to men. So from this, we can infer that the general public also views women as more compassionate, more innovative, and honest as compared to men, right? So that's why I've said that this is a great time to be a woman leader in our current times. So let's talk about that a little bit more. What makes a great leader for the times that we are in currently? Well, great leader is empathetic, inspiring, and motivating. And when they are challenging, they challenge others in very positive ways. They lead by example. They're courageous enough to change as often as is needed in order to drive that team forward. A good leader for these times is one who is comfortable and vulnerable enough to change their mind when they get new facts or other information is brought to light. Someone who's not kind of stuck on the way things used to be done, and instead has more of a future-focused mindset. So let's pause here for just a second and get you involved. So maybe take out something to write with or to write on, or use your phone. And I want you to look at this list, and of the various leadership traits, which ones do you feel the most confident about in regards to yourself and your traits right now? So write the ones down that you feel the most comfortable with. We'll just take about 30 seconds for this. All right, thank you for doing that. At the end of the day, there are definitely leadership traits that matter more than others. Those traits that are just absolutely essential for leaders, things like honesty, intelligence, decisiveness, being organized, compassionate, innovative, as well as ambitious. These traits all matter. So again, just taking out your piece of paper or your phone. Let's get you involved again. Let's write down from this list, write down those meaningful leadership traits that you feel the most confident about in yourself. Those traits you feel the most confident from this list. This is take about 15 seconds or so to do that. Okay. Thank you for that. My argument is that for really the strength of our country and for our world. We must have and we must grow opportunities for female leaders. I gave you that stat about what's in 2060, how many women will be in the workforce. That's why it is so important that you are pursuing higher education degrees at Excelsior University. That's why that's important that you're doing that. You know, one of my sheroes is Michelle Obama, who's pictured here, and she says this so well. No country can ever truly flourish if it stifles the potential of its women and deprives itself of the contributions of half of its citizens. So the next set of slides really highlights the barriers and the biases that has limited opportunities for women, limits that are really short-sighted, and they're problematic, and they must be continually challenged and overcome in order for our country to really have success. And because of these real barriers and obstacles, we as women, we internalize doubt. I shared with you a little bit of my early doubt, and we hesitate to take on leadership roles. We oftentimes will second guess our readiness and our competence. All of this is doubly challenging for women of color, right? Who have even more biases and more barriers to contend with. So, studies have shown that women tend to rank themselves lower when it comes to assessing themselves compared to men. The good news is that as we get older, we become more confident and we rank ourselves higher. And unfortunately, for men, they tend to start ranking themselves a little bit lower as they get older. Men under the age of 25 are likely to rank themselves really high in their abilities compared to women under the age of 25, who tend to rank themselves lower. And again, with age, that does get better. But you know what? We don't have to wait until we get older to know that our abilities are what they need to be in order to be a leader. So I say, why wait? Let's challenge that a little bit. So here's what I can share about my own journey too. I can't tell you how many times that I was told that I couldn't do something. So many times that I didn't belong, that it wasn't good enough. I can even remember Mrs. Hockersmith, who was my 11th grade algebra teacher. Why would I even remember her, right? But I do remember her, and I remember my major professor during graduate school. Both of them, they're subtle and they're not so subtle criticisms and doubts about me. There's surprises that I remember getting a card later on from Mrs. Hockersmith, who was surprised that I had gotten a PhD or that I was in a high-ranking job. People who, have accused me of, ascending the ladder because of affirmative action as opposed to my abilities or because I was Black. All those messages from so many people in power. But you know what? They were all wrong. I can tell you that they were wrong. I can tell you that now. And as you're going through your journey, the end of the story is going to be a good one for you as well. And frankly, those doubters, they just got it wrong, right? So, oftentimes I will think about this, maybe you do too, like maybe we're just being too sensitive. Is there really a gender gap? Is there really a problem? Maybe it's not so bad after all. Well, your president mentioned it. I've mentioned some stats. Here's some more. All of them show that these biases, these gaps, this discrimination is alive and well in 2024 and 25. With 100 men being promoted to their first management position, only 89 to 81 would be promoted. Only 29% of women are in C-suite roles in 2024. It's a slight rise from 2015 for sure, which is good, but men continue to outnumber women at every level of the corporate pipeline, every single one. And this is interesting, white women are projected to reach parity in corporate roles in about 22 years. So it's gonna take 22 more years from 2024 before there potentially is gonna be some kind of parity, but it's gonna take more than twice that long, 48 years for women of color to reach that same hallmark. And as we talked about, most women of color today would say that their ethnicity or their race has played a role in them missing out on opportunities than in previous years. All of those numbers are all up. It's not about being sensitive. And here's another way of looking at that data. This is going in the wrong direction. You're seeing 2018 to 2024, all these numbers are going up. In other words, more and more women are seeing, wow, I am facing obstacles and it's getting in my way of achieving my goals. And then, it's all about, in some ways, the money, because people pay for what they value. And we see things as Latinos earning only 55% of what white men are earning, and that Black women and Native American also well below what white men are earning. And it's going to take like 132 years to close the global gender gap, pay gap at the current rate of change that we have right now in 2024. And even more discouraging, a 20-year-old woman who is starting full-time work in 2024 stands to lose $407,000 over a 40-year career compared to her male counterpart. I mean, that is real money. And here's another way of looking at that data where you see this huge pay gap, even in 2024, and the rate of change is just too slow. So as we look at all this data and the slow progress that has been made, and the deliberate and effective attempts to keep women in their kind of perceived place, where does that leave us? Hopefully you saw me take a little bit of a deep breath, but hopefully it leaves us energized. Another one of my heroes, another Obama, he said this so well. I just love this quote. And he said, "I'm confident that for 2 years, if every nation on earth was run by women, that you'd see significant improvement in everything." And I think he's right, because I know women make great leaders. So let me tell you the rest of my leadership story. So after years of feeling like an imposter, inside, I don't think I showed it necessarily outside, but I felt it many times inside, still achieved lots of great milestones, getting multiple opportunities for advancement. And probably the turning point for me came after a talk with my oldest brother, Michael. Michael is a very successful businessman in the insurance industry. He had hundreds of folks that reported to him, lots of managers. And he said to me one day, he goes, "Robin, and this is when I was working at University of Oregon in the counseling center. He goes, 'When are you going to be the director of the counseling center?' And I said, I don't know, Michael. I still have to learn more about budgeting. I need to take some more workshops. I need to go to more conferences. There's just so much more before I would be ready." And he said, "Oh, women." And I immediately got, defensive, like, "Oh, why are you going to be misogynistic?" And he goes, "No, give me a chance. And he said, "Look, I have a bunch of women managers because women make the best managers." And he hadn't read all the research on this either, but he said they make the best managers because they really know how to talk to people. They know how to build teams. They're relational. They do it so much better than we men do. And he said, "I'm going to tell you a secret." He said, "A lot of times men take advantage of things, but they're just faking it. They don't know that they're ready, but women think that they have to be totally ready before they can do things. And so I want you to know that it's okay to fake it. You just need to go for it." I thought that was crazy advice at the time, but I really thought about it. I couldn't stop thinking about it. And I decided he was absolutely right. And right after that talk, 2 weeks later, I threw my hat in the ring to become the director of the counseling center. Even though in my mind, I didn't think I was ready, I just kept hearing my brother say, "Fake it till you make it. You can do it." And I did, right? Because we don't have to know every single thing. We have inherent skills and traits inside of us, and we take that with us, and we'll figure out the rest as we go along. And it's okay. And I'm so glad that I know that secret now, because I have taken advantage of things multiple times, in order to make it. And you know what? I did. I achieved my PhD in clinical psychology. I've had multiple executive level jobs at multiple institutions that culminates in my current post as president of Lewis and Clark College. Unfortunately, I remain a rare breed, and I don't like that, with only 5% of university presidents being Black women. In the middle of that picture, there are two of my friends who are both presidents, Robert Kelly at the University of Portland and Lori White at DePauw University. That was at my inauguration. They were both there, which is great, but there needs to be many, many more of us. But I know that that's going to improve, especially with good students such as you coming through the pipeline, because the pipeline is key. So what you're doing now, getting your higher education degree, that's what's going to help ensure that you're in the pipeline and that you have the credentials in order to advance and to be in these positions and to lead. You've already made the most important choice, and that's pursuing your degree. So your social mobility, your ability to obtain the jobs that you want and be in the spaces that you need to be, they've already gone up exponentially by you pursuing a higher education degree. So good job. Now you just have to finish strong, right? So here's some tips for you to think about as you start or continue on your leadership journey. It's so important as a leader to practice resilience, right? That's a little bit of what I was doing when I was saying, I'm going to do this. I'm going to fake it till I make it. I'm just practicing resilience, having humility, play to your strengths, not to your weaknesses. Be of service to others. That will never steer you wrong. And take some risk. Take some risk. Find mentors. Don't compare yourself to others. Demonstrate strength with grace and with kindness. Offer support, not criticism. And most importantly, because a lot of people forget this, take care of yourself. So let's just take a moment again for the last time to reflect on where you are on these, right? I'm curious of these various leadership traits and these tips. Which ones do you feel the most confident in, right? So I want you to just write down the ones I feel pretty confident about the way I do these, right? And then afterward, maybe 2 weeks from now, I want you to take this out and I want you to make a note of those that you didn't feel so comfortable writing down, that they were things that you had on lockdown. So those are opportunities, right, for you to work on those particular traits and get some feedback and gain better understanding how you can move those into strengths as well. So just a second or two to write down where you think, yeah, these are things I'm doing pretty well. You know, in every journey, there are challenges. There are moments when the path feels uncertain, the obstacles seem just too great, and the finish line just appears way too distant. But you have to remember, it's in those very moments of struggle that you have the greatest opportunity to discover your inner strength. Resilience is not just about just bouncing back. It's about growing through adversity, learning from each setback, and then continuing forward with a deeper understanding of your actual potential. Each barrier that you face, whether it's academic, it's personal, or external, it's an opportunity to redefine what's possible, because you have the power to shape your own narrative and to lead with determination and with courage. So don't let setbacks define you. Instead, let them refine you. Use every challenge as fuel to grow stronger, wiser, and more determined. As students of Excelsior University, you're part of a community that's actually built on the values of perseverance, commitment, and empowerment. So embrace those values and remember that you have everything within you to break through any barrier and rise above any challenge. Your journey is not defined by what you face, but by how you chose to overcome it. So stay resilient, keep pushing forward. Your success is not just the destination, it is the courage and the strength you carry with you along the way. So thank you for this opportunity to share my journey with you. It's been an honor. In many ways, my story is probably not very different than yours. I hope that you can see a little bit of me and my success in you, because we can overcome the barriers that are placed in front of us, but we need strong mentors, we need a strong community, and we need folks to believe in us in order to do so. So I wish for you all of those advantages. I know that I am thankful for them. So thank you, and I will turn it back over to Daniel.
Robin, thank you so much for your very inspiring message today. In particular, thank you so much for sharing your story. That was so not only inspiring, but I am sure it requires some level of vulnerability, and we're really appreciative that you decided to do that with us, and for the amazing not only inspiration but information and advice that you have given us today. We have time for comments and questions, and we want to make sure that we allow for folks to share their insight. Remember that you can post your comment or question in the chat or in the Q&A space, or you could also say, I'd like to be elevated to a panelist space, so that then you can ask your question directly to President Holmes-Sullivan. So Pam, do we have any questions yet in the space? Let's go ahead.
We do. We have one. Thank you, Dr. Holmes-Sullivan, for your wonderful keynote today. This anonymous attendee said, "Thank you for sharing your personal story. I appreciate the vulnerability. How important is it to you to share your authentic story with your staff and college community, and for them to share theirs?" Great question.
Well, thank you for that question. I think it's critically important. And one of the things I said in terms of leadership traits is, your ability to lead by example. And I think, my ability to speak authentically from my heart allows other people to do the same thing. And it really allows for building a stronger community. So there's lots of important reasons to do that. It also, it's always hard to be vulnerable. You have to decide, what level you want to do and expose yourself. That's totally up to you. But I feel good about pushing myself to be somewhat vulnerable today, because I don't know who I might have impacted, who might say, wow, I totally get that imposter syndrome. And so if that can have me being vulnerable can help someone else feel seen and feel better about what they're doing or what they're needing to do, then that makes it all worth it. So I think it's a skill that you have to practice in order to really do it well. But I think it's critically important for a leader.
Thank you.
Well, while people think of additional questions, as I have a question that I was thinking about, Robin, throughout your presentation, and I am again so thankful that you shared your story, but that the theme of you often being first really struck me. In part because I know you and I respected you so much for so long that it just, the way in which I usually think of the discrepancies, right? The contrasts, the nonsensical contrasts that we see in our society and organizations. Yeah, there's a moral issue, but there's also an intelligence problem, right? That we're not tapping into brilliance that is right in front of our noses, right? And we miss critical intelligence to operate effectively simply because we don't want to see it or because we are distracted and we miss it, whatever that might be. And you talked about needing to pivot to remain resilient and to deal with your imposter syndrome. And you talked about the importance of finding people with whom you identified could support you and whom you could emulate, of how many times you were told that you weren't ready, right? And how they were all wrong, all these things. And I cannot avoid but thinking that right now, I imagine, at least I identify very strongly, is how we feel, and in terms of our capacity to make any difference, to make change, and how many people might be feeling that they need to be the first in order to be courageous. And what advice would you have to those who are like at that verge of, I need to do something, I have no idea how to, I feel that the world is completely oppressing me at this point. Something needs to be done. What step do I take? How do I do it?
Well, it's a great question, Daniel. I resonate with all that you're saying. And the thing about being first, I mean, in some ways I have to reach back for myself to remember some of the more vulnerable feelings about that, because it is just so common for me. It's happened my entire life that I'm so used to it. But doesn't mean that being first doesn't have some of those very difficult components that you alluded to. I think the first thing in wanting to make a change or seeing that you need to do something or feeling an urge to do something, the first thing to do is to listen to that urge. It's there for a reason, and to honor it, that you want something to change. And then you have to take stock about how you can do that. And are you in a position to do that? And how can you be supported, in doing that? Sometimes trying to do something, if you're not in the right position to do it, can lead to, negative outcomes, and you don't want that. But at the same time, the word that you use, and this word I say to myself all the time when I have to do something really hard, is, okay, I'm going to do a courage check. Where's my courage, right? And when I'm unsure about that, because that still happens, am I going to do this or not do this? I talk to other people, right? I get a courage check sometimes outside of myself, because I might get myself to do something else or not do something because I'm afraid or scared or I'm not being courageous. And so I have a cadre of very trusted advisors that I oftentimes will go to kind of get that gut check. But the main thing I want to say is that if you're having a feeling, an instinct that you want to do something, you should listen to that. It's there for a reason. And then the thing is to figure out strategically, how can you actually do it?
Thank you. Thank you for that answer. Pam, I see a question in the chat.
Yeah, I have one other question here. Thank you for sharing your story. This comes from Gretchen, an inspiration with us today. Where did you find your mentors?
Well, my first mentors by far, I didn't have to look very far because they were my mom and dad, right? And so I learned from them the value of mentorship, and that you should ask for help and ask questions and ask them. I would ask them things like, well, how did you know to do this? And how did you know to do that? We'd have really long and robust talks. So I learned at an early age about mentors because my parents were just such excellent mentors. And then, through my career and even now, if I'm at a conference and someone's inspiring to me, I will ask them if I can reach out. When I'm in spaces where I'm seeing someone who I feel drawn to, who I think might have something that could be of help to me, I reach out to them. So a lot of times it's in a particular space where I'm able to witness that person doing what they do and realizing, wow, I'd like to ask them a question. I'd like to get more information from them. And then within my own kind of network of college presidents, for example, I was just talking to an African-American president who is about an hour down the road, and we just touch base, sometimes. And so she's a mentor to me, even though it's a very collegial one. Don't be shy about asking people. People ask me all the time, will I mentor them? Will I be willing to talk to them? I put on the slide there, you can write to me, right? I do that because so many people have done that for me. And I know how important it is and how much I need that. But a mentor most of the time is not just going to walk up to you and say, hey, I'd like to mentor you. That's very rare. So you've got to be the one to reach out to someone that you see might have things that could be of support to you or help you grow or help you become a better person. Just take that risk and just ask them. The worst they can say is, hey, I just don't have time. But 9 times out of 10, people say, sure, I'm happy to mentor you. So I really encourage people to think about reaching out to others and to make sure you always have a cadre of folks that you can check in with. People who are not just going to be like, you're great, this is great. People who will say, yeah, you're not seeing that very well right now. Let's talk about that more. So people that are willing to give you real feedback for the common good. So reach out to people, take that risk, because good leaders take risks, and mentorship's important.
Thank you. Gretchen also says, sounds like mentors would be a good place to go for the courage check. I love that concept.
Right.
I'll just read some of these comments. Thank you for your thoughtful message and conversation. What a powerful message and invitation to our faculty, staff, students, and university community to examine their confidence in their skills and competencies. Thank you, Dr. Holmes-Sullivan. Thank you for coming to speak to us. I particularly enjoyed the discussion of leadership traits. And Gretchen said, thank you for your feedback on mentors.
All right, well, let's begin to close our session as we are coming up at the end of our time. But let me just say a couple of things, and then Robin, if you have some final or closing remarks that you'd like to make. It seems to me that, and this might be my own bias, but it seems to me that it is one of the most important moments when we need to pay attention to this. And this goes to everyone, men and women and all sectors, and not only higher education, but every industry. I feel that we are at a crossroads. Sometimes it feels that we are at the edge of an abyss rather than at crossroads. And the decisions that we make to leverage our collective intelligence and to see the value of others, right? I think will be so critical moving forward. And it looks like we won't just do it with everyone, that we'll need to step up into that courageous space in order to make a stand. And I really appreciated your message of encouragement and wisdom and insight on how to do this, because I think it might determine our future. And this is not just a national challenge, it's a global issue that is beginning to develop in front of our eyes. So thank you for this. And let me pass the word to you to see if you have any closing remarks that you'd like to share with us.
Thank you, Daniel, and thank you for many decades of friendship and for this opportunity. I really have appreciated it, really enjoyed it. It's good for me to be able to reflect on my journey and to talk about it. So it's been just a pleasure to have this opportunity. I want to elevate what you said, that the time that we're living in right now is critically important. We're going to be judged by this time in history. What did you do during this time in history? That's what we have to be thinking about. And the time is now for those of us who are in the minority or marginalized, women, people of color, folks with particular disabilities, whoever you are, to really know that your presence makes a difference. It makes our country stronger. We need leaders of all types, such as you, but it's going to take courage for us to step up in this space. We will be judged in history by what happens over the next 2, 4, 6, 8 years. And we all want to have that opportunity when we look back on that to say, I did everything that I could. And then the last thing I would say is that, it's not going to always work out perfectly. It is hard, but in that struggle, in that journey, with those barriers, with those, sometimes lack of opportunities, there's a kernel there that with courage and with, confidence in yourself and just keep at it, as you all are doing, we're going to be just fine. I know that. And so I'm looking forward to our future, and I'm optimistic about that, even during these times of trouble. And doing things like this really gives me a boost. So I'm good for the rest of the day after spending some time with all of you. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, President Holmes-Sullivan. Thank you, Pam. Thank you, Naila. Thank you, everyone who joined us today. And let's continue the conversation.